Welcome to a story that delves into the depths of devotion, betrayal, and rediscovery. Join us as we unravel the life of Emma, a woman whose 23 years of unwavering care for her paralyzed husband take an unexpected turn, leading her on a journey of truth, resilience, and finding herself again. Emma Wilson moved through her small but well-kept living room with the fluidity of someone accustomed to repetition. The room smelled faintly of lavender, a soothing choice to mask the sterile scent of medical supplies and antiseptics. A hospital bed dominated the space, surrounded by monitors and four stands. Emma adjusted the blanket covering her husband, Jack, tucking it gently around his still frame. "Morning, love," she said softly, her voice tender yet weary. She leaned over to kiss his forehead, noting his blank expression. His pale blue eyes blinked slowly, the only sign of acknowledgement he could manage, or so Emma believed. At 66, Emma was a woman defined by her routine. Every day for the past 23 years, she attended to Jack's every need. Ever since the car accident that had rendered him paralyzed, she had been just 43 when it happened, full of life and plans for the future. The accident had shattered those plans, replacing them with years of caregiving, sacrifice, and loneliness. The early days had been the hardest. Doctors had explained the extent of Jack's injuries in stark medical terms: paralysis from the neck down, no chance of recovery. Emma had clung to hope for months, scouring articles and consulting specialists, until the reality finally sank in. Her husband, once an active and charismatic man, was confined to a life of immobility, and she had confined herself to his side. Despite the sacrifices, Emma had never wavered in her love for Jack. She had promised to care for him in sickness and in health, and she intended to keep that promise. Yet, over the years, her world had shrunk to the size of their home, her life consumed by caregiving. Friends and family drifted away, their well-meaning visits dwindling into the occasional phone call. Only Karen, her childhood best friend, remained a constant presence. That morning, as Emma prepared Jack's breakfast, a meticulous blend of nutrients blended into a liquid, she couldn't shake a nagging feeling. For weeks now, odd things had been happening. She had walked into the room one day to find a glass of water half empty when she was sure she'd left it full. Another time, she swore she'd heard a sigh, almost human, from Jack's room when she'd been in the kitchen. She had dismissed these incidents as the product of her imagination, the mind playing tricks on a woman who had spent too many years in solitude. Yet the doubts lingered. As Emma fed Jack, carefully spooning the liquid into his mouth, she studied him closely. His face was still, as always, but there was something she couldn't quite place, a tension in his features. Perhaps? She shook her head, dismissing the thought. "You're overthinking, Emma," she muttered to herself as she placed the spoon on the tray. The sound of the doorbell interrupted her thoughts. Emma wiped her hands on a towel and opened the door to find Karen standing there, holding a bag of scones and wearing her trademark bright smile. "I thought you could use some company," Karen said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Emma felt a wave of gratitude. Karen's visits were her lifeline to the outside world, a reminder that she was more than just a caregiver. They settled on the small front porch with cups of tea, watching the quiet street. Karen glanced at Emma, her smile fading as she noted the dark circles under her friend's eyes. "You look tired, Emma." "More than usual," Karen said gently. Emma shrugged, staring into her tea. "I've been thinking too much lately. Strange things keep happening, and I can't make sense of them. It's probably nothing." Karen tilted her head. "What kind of strange things?" Emma hesitated before recounting the incidents, the glass of water, the sigh, the subtle shifts in Jack's expression. Karen listened intently, her brow furrowing. "Emma," Karen said cautiously, "have you considered, I don't know, checking into this? Maybe you're noticing something real." Emma shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "What are you saying, Karen? That Jack isn't paralyzed? It's been 23 years. He's barely moved a muscle all this time." Karen placed a hand on Emma's arm. I'm not saying that, but you owe it to yourself to get some peace of mind. Maybe there's a logical explanation. Emma stared into the distance, Karen's words echoing in her mind. Peace of mind. It had been so long since she'd felt anything close to peace. That night, after Karen left, Emma sat in the living room beside Jack's bed. She reached for his hand, as she often did, holding it gently between her own. If you could talk, Jack, what would you say to me? She whispered. The only response was the soft hum of the medical equipment. Her thoughts swirled as she considered Karen's suggestion. It felt wrong, intrusive even, to question Jack's condition, but the doubts gnawed at her, a tiny crack in the foundation of her certainty. Finally, with a deep breath, Emma opened her laptop and began researching surveillance cameras. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the options, her mind torn between guilt and determination. The camera arrived 2 days later. Emma unboxed it in the kitchen, her heart pounding. The device was small, almost unnoticeable, perfect for her purpose. She set it up discreetly on the living room shelf, angling it to capture Jack's bed and the surrounding area. That night, Emma lay in bed, unable to sleep. Her mind raced with questions. What if the camera confirmed her doubts? What if it didn't? Would either answer bring her peace? She turned over restlessly, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. In the living room, the camera's tiny light blinked, quietly recording a secret that had been buried for decades. Unbeknownst to Emma, her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains in the living room, casting a soft glow over Jack's immobile form. Emma's routine was the same as always, carefully adjusting his pillows, wiping his face with a damp cloth, and ensuring his medication was administered on schedule. Yet, a knot of anticipation churned in her stomach as she worked, her thoughts consumed by the camera she had set up the previous night. As she prepared Jack's breakfast, she glanced at the shelf where the device was hidden, wondering what secrets it might have captured. Could it possibly reveal anything out of the ordinary? Or was she just chasing shadows, desperate to escape the monotony of her life? After ensuring Jack was comfortable, Emma retreated to the kitchen, tablet in hand, and opened the camera's app. Her fingers trembled as she navigated to the recordings, her breath catching when the first video loaded. The screen displayed a still frame of the living room, illuminated by the dim light of the medical equipment. Everything appeared normal. Emma pressed play. The footage rolled on, showing nothing unusual for the first few hours. Jack remained still, his chest rising and falling with the mechanical rhythm of his breathing. Emma fast-forwarded through the video, her heart pounding as the timeline progressed. And then, around 2 in the morning, something changed. Jack moved. Emma froze, her eyes wide as she watched her paralyzed husband, shift his head slightly, then turn it fully to one side. Her grip on the tablet tightened as the screen showed him raising an arm and flexing his fingers. His movements slow and deliberate, as if testing muscles that hadn't been used in years. He glanced around the room, his expression calm yet alert. Then, to Emma's utter disbelief, Jack swung his legs over the side of the bed and sat up. The tablet slipped from Emma's hands, clattering onto the kitchen table. She pressed her palms to her temples, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions tearing through her. Disbelief, anger, confusion. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she tried to make sense of what she had just seen. No, she whispered, her voice barely audible. It can't be. A part of her wanted to dismiss the footage as a dream or a cruel trick of the mind. But she knew better. The images were real. Jack, the man she had cared for tirelessly for over 2 decades, had been lying to her. She needed answers. With newfound determination, Emma stormed into the living room. Jack lay as he always did, his eyes half open and his face devoid of expression. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure how to confront him, but the memory of the footage propelled her forward. Jack, she said, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. I need you to look at me. There was no response. Emma clenched her fists, her frustration boiling over. Don't pretend anymore. I know. Jack, I saw the camera. I know you can move. Still, Jack remained motionless. Emma felt her resolve falter. What if she had misunderstood? What if? But then, Jack blinked. Slowly, deliberately. Emma's breath caught. It wasn't the reflexive, sluggish blink she had grown used to over the years. This blink carried intention. Acknowledgement. You've been lying to me, she said, her voice cracking under the weight of her realization. All this time, why? Jack, why would you do this? Silence hung heavy between them, the hum of the medical equipment amplifying the tension in the room. Emma's heart sank as she watched Jack's eyes dart to the side, his face betraying the first hints of guilt. You owe me the truth, she pressed, her voice firmer now. After everything I've done, after all these years, the least you can do is explain yourself. Jack exhaled, a faint sound that might have been mistaken for a sigh by someone less attuned to him. Slowly, his lips parted, and for the first time in over 2 decades, he spoke. I didn't know how to stop, he said, his voice hoarse and barely audible. Emma staggered back, the sound of his voice both familiar and alien. What do you mean you didn't know how to stop? What are you talking about? Jack averted his gaze, his body visibly tense. It started after the accident. I was scared. Emma, you fought. I thought you'd leave me if you knew I wasn't really paralyzed. Emma stared at him, her mind reeling. Leave you? Why would you think that? I've stood by you every step of the way. Jack, I gave up my entire life for you. Tears welled in Jack's eyes, his voice cracking with emotion. At first, I just needed time to figure things out. But then the days turned into weeks, the weeks into years. I didn't know how to come clean without losing you. Emma felt her chest tighten with a mix of anger and heartbreak. So you let me sacrifice everything? My career, my friends, my dreams? All because you were too much of a coward to tell the truth. Jack's face crumpled, his hands trembling in his lap. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I never stopped loving you. Emma, not for a second. Emma turned away, her thoughts a chaotic jumble. She needed space, time to process what she had just learned. Without another word, she left the living room, her footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. In her bedroom, she sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands trembling as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. Her entire life had been built around Jack's care. Now, it felt as if the foundation had been ripped out from under her. The man she had loved, the man she had devoted herself to, had betrayed her in the most profound way. And yet, buried beneath her anger was a flicker of something else. Relief. Relief that Jack wasn't as helpless as she had believed. Relief that maybe, just maybe, she could reclaim a part of the life she had given up. But first, she needed answers, and she needed to decide what to do next. Emma sat in her kitchen the next morning, the steam from her untouched cup of tea curling into the air like the questions swirling in her mind. She barely slept, her thoughts haunted by the image of Jack sitting up in bed, the sound of his voice trembling with guilt. 23 years of devotion, care, and sacrifice, all of it, it seemed, had been built on a lie. The faint creak of a door opening startled her. She turned to see Jack standing in the hallway, leaning against the wall for support. His frame was thinner than she had realized, his movements awkward and unsteady. For a moment, she felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly replaced by the surge of anger bubbling just beneath her skin. You're walking, she said flatly, her voice devoid of emotion. I see you didn't waste any time proving me wrong. Jack shifted uncomfortably, his hands gripping the edge of the doorway for balance. I thought we should talk. Emma motioned to the chair across from her, her expression cold. Fine, talk. He moved slowly, his gait uneven but determined, and lowered himself into the chair. The silence between them was thick, punctuated only by the soft clink of Emma's teaspoon against her mug as she stirred her tea absent-mindedly. I know I don't deserve your kindness, Jack began, his voice quieter than she remembered. But I'm here to tell you everything. Emma raised an eyebrow, her arms crossed over her chest. I'm listening. Jack took a deep breath, his hands trembling as he rested them on the table. It started after the accident, when the doctors told me I wasn't paralyzed. I panicked. I was afraid of what that meant for us, for our life together. You mean you were afraid of losing control? Emma snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. Jack flinched but nodded. Yes, I was selfish. I thought if you believed I needed you, you'd stay. And once I started the lie, I couldn't stop. Every day that passed made it harder to tell the truth. Emma leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Do you have any idea what you put me through? Do you even realize what I gave up? My career, my friends, my dreams of having a family, all of it, Jack, for you, because I thought you couldn't survive without me. Tears glistened in Jack's eyes, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. I know, Emma, I've seen it every day, and the guilt it's eaten away at me, but I didn't know how to fix it without breaking us. Emma's laugh was hollow, filled with bitterness. Breaking us? Jack, there hasn't been an us in years. There's been me, your caretaker, your nurse, your shadow, and you, lying there pretending to be helpless. Jack looked down, his hands clenched in a fist on the table. I never wanted it to be like this. I thought I was protecting us, but I see now. I was wrong. I hurt you more than I ever could have imagined. Emma's heart twisted at his words, but she refused to let herself soften. She had spent too many years swallowing her own pain, burying her own needs for his sake. It was time for her to take back her life. I don't know if I can forgive you, Jack, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. And honestly, I don't know if I even want to. Jack's head snapped up, his eyes wide with panic. Emma, please. No, she interrupted, holding up a hand. This isn't about what you want anymore. For 23 years, I lived my life around your needs, your lies. I need time to figure out what I want. Jack nodded slowly, his expression one of defeat. I understand. I won't fight you on this. Emma stood, her chair scraping against the floor. Good, because for the first time in a long time, I'm putting myself first. She left him sitting there, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Upstairs, she found herself staring at the reflection in her bedroom mirror, a face lined with years of exhaustion, but with a spark of something new in her eyes. Determination. Underscore 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 underscore. Over the next few days, Emma kept her distance from Jack. She maintained a cordial, almost clinical demeanor, ensuring his basic needs were met, but refusing to engage beyond that. Instead, she focused on herself. She went for walks in the park, reconnected with old friends over coffee, and even dusted off her easel, rediscovering the joy of painting. One afternoon, her best friend, Susan, stopped by. As they sat in the garden sipping lemonade, Emma finally confessed the truth about Jack's deception. Susan's eyes widened in disbelief. He's been lying to you all these years? Emma, I don't even know what to say. It's unforgivable. Emma nodded, her hands trembling as she gripped her glass. I feel so stupid. Sue, how could I not have seen it? Susan reached across the table, taking her friend's hand. You're not stupid. Emma, you're kind. You wanted to believe him because you loved him. That's not a weakness. It's your strength. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away. It doesn't feel like strength. It feels like I wasted half my life. Susan shook her head. It's never too late to start over. Emma, you've spent so long taking care of him. Maybe it's time to take care of yourself. The words resonated deeply with Emma, igniting a spark of hope she hadn't felt in years. That evening, as she stood in front of her easel, the brush gliding across the canvas, she realized Susan was right. This was her time to reclaim her life. Underscore 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 underscore. Jack, meanwhile, was grappling with his own guilt. Each day, he pushed himself to regain his strength, stumbling through the house with the aid of a cane. He stayed out of Emma's way, respecting her need for space. But his heart ached with the weight of their fractured relationship. One night, as Emma painted in her studio, Jack knocked softly on the door. She turned, surprised to see him standing there. "What is it?" "Jack," she asked, her tone neutral. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, his voice trembling, "for everything you've done for me, even when I didn't deserve it." Emma set down her brush, studying him for a long moment. "Jack, gratitude doesn't erase the pain you caused. It's going to take time, if it's even possible, to rebuild any trust between us." Jack nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I understand. I just want you to know I'm trying to be better." Emma sighed, the weight of their shared history pressing heavily on her chest. "I hope you mean that, Jack, because I'm not going to let you hold me back anymore." As he left, Emma turned back to her painting, a swirl of dark blues and vibrant yellows slowly taking shape on the canvas. For the first time in years, she felt like she was painting for herself, for her dreams, her emotions, her future. It was a small step, but it was hers. Emma awoke early the next morning to the sound of birds chirping outside her bedroom window. She stared at the ceiling for a long moment, her mind wandering to the events of the past week. Her once quiet, predictable life had been turned upside down. Yet, amid the chaos, she felt something she hadn't in years: hope. Downstairs, Jack was already up. He had taken to rising early, determined to rebuild his strength. She found him sitting at the dining table, a cup of coffee in his hands. He looked up as she entered, his expression tentative. "Morning," he said, his voice soft. "Morning," Emma replied, keeping her tone neutral. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat at the opposite end of the table. The silence between them was heavy, but no longer suffocating. Jack cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about everything. About what I did. I want to make it right." Emma raised an eyebrow, her gaze steady. "And how do you plan to do that, Jack? You can't undo the last 23 years. He nodded, a shadow of shame passing over his face. "I know, but I want to try. I've started writing down everything. How I felt, what I did, why I made the choices I did. I thought maybe it could help you understand." Emma leaned back in her chair, surprised. Jack had never been one to express himself openly. The idea that he was trying to put his thoughts into words was unexpected. "I'm not sure understanding will make it any easier," she said, her voice measured. "But, thank you." Jack's eyes flickered with something that resembled relief. "I'll leave the journal on the counter when it's ready. You don't have to read it if you don't want to." Emma gave a small nod and stood, leaving him to his thoughts. She wasn't sure if she'd ever want to read his confessions, but the fact that he was trying mattered, if only a little. Later that day, Susan stopped by for tea. Emma welcomed her friend with a warm hug, grateful for the company. They settled on the patio, the sun casting a gentle glow over the garden. "How are you holding up?" Susan asked, her voice laced with concern. Emma shrugged, staring out at the flowers she had planted years ago. "It's complicated. Some days, I feel like I can move forward, like I'm finally finding myself again. Other days, I feel trapped, angry, confused. I don't know if I can ever forgive him." Susan reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "You don't have to forgive him, Emma. Forgiveness is for you, not for him. If you don't feel ready, or if you never do, that's okay." Emma nodded, her throat tightening. "I just don't know what the future looks like anymore. For so long, my life was about him. Now, I don't even know who I am without that." Susan smiled gently. "You're figuring it out. Every day, you're taking steps, painting, reconnecting with old friends, standing up for yourself. That's who you are, Emma, a strong, resilient woman." The words settled over Emma like a warm blanket. She had spent so many years doubting herself, suppressing her own needs and desires. It was strange, but also empowering, to hear someone remind her of her own strength. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening, Emma decided to tackle one of the many boxes in the attic, a task she had avoided for years. The attic was dusty and dimly lit. The faint smell of aged wood filling the air. She opened the first box, finding old photo albums, letters, and keepsakes from her life with Jack before the accident. She flipped through an album, the images of their younger selves staring back at her. They had been so happy, so full of dreams. Her fingers lingered on a photo of the two of them at the beach, their smiles wide and carefree. She couldn't remember the last time she had smiled like that. Her eyes fell on a folded piece of paper tucked between the pages. She pulled it out, her heart skipping a beat as she unfolded it. It was a letter Jack had written to her shortly after their wedding, a letter she had forgotten existed. Emma, you are my everything. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I promise to spend my life trying to be worthy of your love. You make me want to be a better man, and I hope I can give you the happiness you deserve. Always, Jack. Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she read the words. The Jack who had written this letter felt like a different person, a distant memory of the man she had fallen in love with. She folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the album, her emotions a confusing mix of sadness and longing. Underscore 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 underscore. The following day, Jack approached Emma as she painted in her studio. He stood in the doorway, his hands gripping his cane tightly. Emma, he began, his voice hesitant. I've been working on something, and I'd like to show you. She set her brush down, her curiosity piqued. What is it? Jack gestured for her to follow him. They walked to the guest room, where he had set up a small table covered in papers. He handed her a neatly bound journal. This is everything, he said quietly. Every thought, every regret, every truth I couldn't bring myself to say. I don't expect it to fix anything, but I needed to be honest. Emma took the journal, her hands trembling. I don't know if I'm ready to read this, she admitted. Jack nodded. Take your time, or don't read it at all. I just wanted to give you the choice. She stared at the journal, the weight of it feeling heavier than it should. Thank you, she said softly, not meeting his eyes. Underscore 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 underscore. That night, Emma sat in bed, the journal resting on her lap. She opened it hesitantly, her heart pounding as she began to read. Jack's words were raw, filled with pain and remorse. He detailed the moments that led to his decision to fake his paralysis, the guilt that had consumed him, and the fear that had kept him silent. As she read, Emma felt a strange sense of catharsis. The journal didn't erase her anger or her hurt, but it gave her a glimpse into Jack's mind, a perspective she had never fully understood before. By the time she closed the journal, the sun was beginning to rise. She sat in silence, her thoughts racing. The path ahead was still unclear, but for the first time, she felt a sliver of clarity. Forgiveness might not come easily, and trust would take time to rebuild. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way forward. Emma looked out the window, the first rays of sunlight painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. A new day was beginning, and with it, a chance to take another step toward healing. Part 5, a new chapter. The morning sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating Emma's kitchen as she prepared her tea. The journal Jack had given her lay on the counter, its pages dog-eared from a sleepless night of reading. Her emotions were still raw, oscillating between anger and understanding. But there was also a sense of relief. For the first time in years, she felt she had a complete picture of Jack's choices, his fears, and his regrets. It didn't erase the pain, but it helped her see the man behind the lies. Jack entered the kitchen, his steps slow and measured. He paused at the threshold, his expression cautious. "Good morning," he said, his voice tentative. "Good morning," Emma replied, glancing at him briefly before returning to her tea. Did you read it? He asked. No tinto arte giorno. I did, she said, keeping her tone neutral. She took a sip of her tea before turning to face him fully. It doesn't make everything better, Jack, but it helps me understand. Jack exhaled, as if a weight had been lifted. That's all I hoped for, he said quietly. Thank you for giving it a chance. Emma studied him, noticing the way his posture seemed less guarded, his movements more deliberate. There was something different about him, an effort to show, rather than hide, who he truly was. Later that day, Emma made her way to the community center for her painting class. As she entered the familiar space, she was greeted by warm smiles and waves from her classmates. Over the past few months, these sessions had become a sanctuary, a place where she could channel her emotions into color and texture. Her instructor, Claire, approached with a clipboard. Emma, can I have a word? She asked, her tone excited. Of course, Emma replied, setting down her supplies. I've been speaking with the gallery director, Claire began, and they're hosting a special exhibit next month for local artists. I recommended your work, and they love the idea. Would you be interested in showcasing your pieces? Emma blinked, taken aback. An exhibit? My work? Yes, Claire said, smiling. Your art tells such a powerful story. I think it could really resonate with people. Emma hesitated, her mind racing. The idea of sharing her art, and by extension, her personal journey with the world was both thrilling and terrifying. But deep down, she knew this was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. I'd love to, she said finally, her voice steady. Thank you for believing in me. That evening, Emma shared the news with Susan over tea on the patio. Her friend's face lit up with excitement. That's amazing. Emma, I knew you had it in you, Susan said, raising her teacup in a mock toast to new beginnings. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. It feels like a step forward, she admitted, but it's also overwhelming. What if people don't understand? What if they judge me? They won't, Susan said firmly. And even if some do, remember, you're not doing this for them. You're doing it for yourself. Emma nodded, letting Susan's words sink in. She realized that this exhibit wasn't just about art. It was about reclaiming her identity, proving to herself that she was more than the caretaker she had been for so long. As the days turned into weeks, Emma threw herself into preparing for the exhibit. Her once cluttered studio transformed into a hive of activity. Canvases lined the walls, each one capturing a different facet of her journey: pain, anger, resilience, and hope. Jack often watched her from the doorway, offering quiet words of encouragement. He had taken to spending his days reading and rehabilitating, determined to rebuild both his body and his character. Though their relationship remained fragile, there was a growing sense of mutual respect. They were no longer adversaries trapped in a web of lies, but two people trying to navigate the aftermath together. One evening, as Emma worked on her final piece, Jack approached with a hesitant smile. You've really poured your soul into these, he said, gesturing to the canvases. I have, Emma replied, not looking up from her work. Do you think I could come to the exhibit? He asked cautiously. I'd like to support you, if that's okay. Emma paused, her brush hovering above the canvas. I think that would be fine, she said after a moment. Just don't expect anything more than that. Jack nodded. I understand. Thank you. The night of the exhibit arrived. and the gallery buzzed with energy. Friends, family, and art enthusiasts mingled, their voices creating a warm hum that filled the space. Emma stood near the entrance, her heart racing as she greeted guests. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, her hair pinned back, and for the first time in years, she felt truly confident. The centerpiece of the exhibit was a painting titled Rebirth, a swirling mix of dark blues and purples, punctuated by streaks of gold and white light. It symbolized Emma's journey from despair to hope, a visual representation of her struggle to reclaim her life. As Emma moved through the crowd, she overheard snippets of conversation. "This piece is so powerful," one guest said, standing before Rebirth. "It's like you can feel the emotions behind it," another added. Their words filled Emma with a sense of pride. Her story, once hidden in the shadows, was now inspiring others. Toward the end of the evening, Emma spotted Jack standing in front of Rebirth. He seemed lost in thought, his expression a mixture of admiration and regret. She approached cautiously. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice soft. "You've captured so much of everything." Emma studied him for a moment, then nodded. "It's a part of me," she said simply. Jack turned to face her. "Yes, Ernest. Emma, I know I can never make up for what I did, but seeing all of this tonight, it makes me realize just how much I've taken from you. I'm sorry." She took a deep breath, the weight of his words settling over her. "I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive you, Jack," she said honestly, "but I can see that you're trying, and that means something." Jack nodded, his gaze steady. "I'll keep trying," he said, "for as long as it takes." By the end of the evening, as the gallery began to empty, Emma stood alone in front of Rebirth. She felt a sense of closure, as though the chapter she had been struggling to finish had finally come to an end. Susan appeared at her side, a glass of champagne in hand. "You did it, Emma," she said, her voice filled with pride. "This is just the beginning." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "It feels like it," she said softly. As she left the gallery that night, Emma felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she knew she was no longer defined by her past. She was an artist, a survivor, and, most importantly, a woman rediscovering her dreams. And with each new day, she would continue painting her story, one bold, beautiful stroke at a time. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through Emma's life, a story of sacrifice, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. Her resilience reminds us of the strength within us all to face life's unexpected turns and find new beginnings. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe for more powerful tales that inspire and resonate. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue exploring the human spirit together. Until next time, take care and stay inspired.